What's the dumbest thing you had a boss tell you? Before we get started, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and turn on the bell so you don't miss future videos. Thanks for the support. Boss, do you plan on leaving us? Me, no. Boss, okay, good, 'cause we need you. If you ever do plan on quitting, I'm gonna need about 6 months notice. And then we'd probably let you go at about the 4-month mark. Me, noted. 2 weeks later. Me, here's my 1-month notice. Boss, I mean really, what was he expecting after telling me straight to my face they were gonna mess me over? Next story. I work at a tribal casino. Anytime we would point out they were asking to do something illegal, they'd say, "We are a sovereign nation. We do what we want." Well, last week, we had mandatory training from the NLRB, and every manager had to sign something confirming they understand labor laws do apply on tribal land. They are currently reaching out to everyone they fired for discussing wages, a common thing here, to give them back pay. It's great sitting back and watching this go down. Next story. This guy wasn't technically my boss, but he was the project manager for the end tenant on a big commercial construction job. He wanted something that multiple different trades said couldn't be done in design meetings. We found another solution that we all agreed on and built a mock-up. One day I walk in to see the rejected design being built. When I brought it to everyone's attention, nobody knew a dang thing and were confused as all heck. Eventually this guy shows up and says, "Let's not focus on how we got here. Let's focus on a solution to move forward." When he said that, I looked at him and said, "So it was you who decided to ignore all our time creating a solution. You wanted what you wanted regardless of if it could be done or not, and are just basically screwing us all, hoping we will find a solution for you." He said, again. "Yeah," I said, "you just messed up us all, and now you want us to fix it for you." I use that mess all the time though. Let's not focus on how I let you down. Let's focus on how you're gonna fix it for me. Next story. While working in the construction industry, I had a boss that believed in asking for samples. For example, tiny component comes in boxes of 50, but you only need 2. Go to the supplier and ask for a sample of 2 individual tiny components at no charge. Suppliers will actually do this for us from time to time. Mind you, these tiny components may cost no more than $1 a piece, if that. One day, I was tasked to get a quote from various suppliers on a heavy piece of equipment that also needed to abide by certain specifications. There was only one supplier who carried it, and the total cost would be just over $30,000 plus another few thousand to have it shipped. Due to the cost, I needed to get my boss's signature. I approached him with the quote, and he told me, "We're not paying for it. Just tell him to send it to us as a sample." I reminded my boss what we were ordering. This wasn't a dozen screws. This was an industrial pump the size of a diesel engine. He shrugged and doubled down. Tell him to write it off as a sample anyway. It's also getting close to Christmas, so he can gift it to us as a gesture of goodwill. I told him to make the call himself and show me how it's done. Of course, he refused. I never did call the supplier back. I simply told my boss I left a voicemail, and all was soon forgotten. Next story. Look yourself in the mirror as to why you're not getting a promotion. The next morning, I looked myself in the mirror on the way to an interview for a better job. Next story. People are weird, and their level of weirdness increases linearly with their responsibilities. Your manager probably learned the "don't say no problem to customers" mantra at some weekend manager team building outing, where they fall backward into each other's arms, lift heavy logs as a team, and sing old campfire songs at night. Next story. Boomers were taught kindness should be rewarded with gratitude. Gen X and millennials were taught kindness to be expected. We say no problem because we don't expect gratitude. We were expected to go out of our way to help. Next story. The pay raise you get can go towards the Ubers you'll need to take to get home late at night. It isn't a pay raise if I'm spending 100% of it, before taxes, on getting home. I'd actually be losing money for more duties. Next story. No problem? Was there a problem? Was I the problem? Absolutely no one ever. Though out-of-touch managers will insist otherwise because they don't like the more modern version of "you're welcome," because it's never a customer complaining about this mess. It's managers insisting that customers will be confused about this mess. Next story. I once said "anytime" in response to a customer saying thank you. I was told not to say that because we were not open all the time, so anytime would not be correct. Next story. When I worked at Starbucks, we weren't allowed to answer with "good" or "okay" when a customer asked how we were doing. I always just said "fantastic." Now I can't stop doing it. That was 14 to 15 years ago. When I worked in a bookstore, I ran the printing machine. I'd stay to get through the list, and one day, like a week in, my boss said I was doing too much work and they didn't want to pay me for more than 7 hours. Next story. Boss, you need to move this product line into that section. Me, that may be an issue. That product currently takes up 174 linear feet of space. And, well, that area you want it moved to is only 80 linear feet. So it won't fit. Who says it won't fit? Have you even tried it? Well, the math tells me 174 feet won't fit into 80 feet. It's 1/2 the space. Blank stare. Next story. Yep, got that one. Also, I see, because it's implying that you can see for the person. Or, don't ask how they are doing, because they may not be doing fine, and this will make them feel worse. This from a supervisor that took my head off for asking how she was doing. How was her weekend? After that, I didn't smile at her, say hello, or make eye contact. We all avoided her. I'd leave the room if she walked in, same with everyone else. Any rants she had were met with a cool, let's keep this professional. I am working on XYZ. The reports should be on your desk at no chit-chat or pleasantries given. Next story. Businesses drive their value from the shareholders, not the workers. Really, jerk? Because I don't see any shareholders back here making this absolutely product. Next story. Had a boss that told us, we plan for success. So we were not allowed to build in time for adjusting new tools upon delivery or any normal project planning time for fixed and such. We were to plan for everything to go perfect the first time. I'm sure someone higher up told him to plan for success and he took it literally. So we just lied. If getting a new inject mold tool took 12 weeks, we told him 16 so we'd have time to run it and make adjustments if needed. Dang, if we didn't nail our project completion dates. Next story. I was asked to provide a list of items that I was not CC'd on where I should have been, as the supervisor. I asked how that would be possible to do. Boss got pissy because it was his favorite employee that was making decisions as non-supervisory management, and that was never informing me. I finally snapped and yelled, how can I tell you what I wasn't notified about when no one told me about it? It isn't possible. The only reason it came up was that we were in a meeting to discuss progress on some priority projects, and he had mentioned that star employee had taken this action, and I said that I wasn't aware of it even though it was assigned to one of my employees. I was then told a letter was sent. I asked to see it, and saw that I wasn't CC'd. This person and my supervisor basically refused to communicate with me at all, so it wasn't a surprise. Next story. Take all the time you need. I need it by 3 p.m. today. I was a part-time employee, my scheduled shift was over, and I was headed to school. I had been trying to get feedback from my boss who was ghosting me for days. He finally looked at a presentation and told me what and when he needed urgent changes. Next story. I used to say, they don't pay me enough to make those decisions, when having to relay foolish diktats from on high to make the point that this stupid policy isn't my choice. My boss told me to stop saying it because he thought it sounded like I was complaining about how little I was being paid. Like, if the first thing that crosses your mind is that I'm probably dissatisfied with my pay scale, there's a pretty easy solution to that. Next story. In 2022, I got called to my boss's office to be counseled because being sick isn't an excuse for teleworking. I must have had a very confused look on my face, because she repeated that statement again. In my head, I was like, isn't COVID and being sick the entire reason we all had to telework a year ago? Next story. In a past software development job, I had a boss who was literally a moron. Actually, I've had a few, but this one takes the cake. To give you an idea, he got fired because he tried to make inappropriate advances toward a woman from HR of all places. Yeah, that dumb. The worst exchange I've had with him was one time when he wanted some documentation for a particular software tool I had written. No problem. I already had a Word doc. I sent it to him. 10 minutes later, I got a response back. This is too hard to read. Can you make a diagram instead? At that point, I was already a little ticked off, but whatever. The problem was, I didn't have access to any tool for making diagrams like MS Visio, but MS Paint could do boxes, text, and arrows, so I painfully made a diagram using Paint and sent it. The response came back, it's a little hard to read. Can you add colors? At that point, I'm like, what on earth is this? Kindergarten? First, we can't read text. We need pictures. And then pictures are hard to understand unless they have colors? If I had the time, I would have much more to say about that guy, and in particular what happened after he was fired. He ended up at a company where I had a very good friend who vehemently protested his hiring, but that's a whole different story. Next story. Every transaction needs a phone number. If you don't enter a phone number, we'll be having a discussion about it. Then, they were shocked when I entered my own phone number for nearly 1,000 transactions over a few weeks. I was told to enter a number. Nobody said anything about it needing to be the customers. Also, screw all of these dang loyalty programs. Just let people buy their things and leave. Next story. I worked at a call center where a certain team leader, essentially one step above entry-level phone support, would go along the windows making sure the blinds were all at the same level so that the office would look more professional to anyone driving by outside. Next story. In the early 90s, I worked in marketing at a major catalog B2B retailer. The CEO was holding a town hall sort of meeting and taking questions. The HQ was in CA, so office hours were Pacific Standard Time, and my question related to extending the customer service hours to accommodate customers in other time zones. Sometimes, were we unavailable until almost noon in other time zones, Eastern Standard Time, or closed by noon in Hawaii? This wasn't a small mom-and-pop business, but a major big-box retailer. His reply was that the data didn't show that customers were calling in at other times, so until it did, we wouldn't be extending the hours. In other words, customers had to call in enough times at times when they knew we were closed before we could get the data that they wanted us to be open during business hours in their time zone. I mean, if I'm a customer and I see hours posted in their catalog, I'm not going to call in when I know they're closed. I think of this every time I hear execs brag about being data-focused. Dumbest thing I ever heard. Next story. That a thermocouple can't be measuring in the minus, because if it was really minus 180 degrees, it would have frost on it. But LTS actually hot, so shut up, put the tool back together, and send it out as it's fixed. Client's tool had burnt out 3 heaters by the time I got it. It was running one at, I reckon, 250 degrees, well over its rating, and only cutting out when the readout passed minus 210, as that was the limit on the readout. After being called many derogatory things, I peeked at the controller and found that the thermocouple wires were round the wrong way. I took a picture, tried to tell the boss, but got, "Have you put that together yet? What do I pay you for?" etc. So I left it. 6 months later when I quit, he was trying to keep me, so I showed him the picture and told him that he was the reason client had to keep replacing the heaters, because he doesn't know when to shut up and listen, and that's why more money won't keep me here. Next story. This was from a boss that I liked, and I do believe that he is an exceptionally smart person. But I had my annual review, and my daily work schedule for a white-collar job was from 8:30 to 5:30. Boss. The only problem I have with your work performance is that when it's 5:30, you are out the door. Me. I don't understand. I'm not leaving early, am I? Boss. No, nothing like that. Me. I'm showing up at 8:30 every morning, right? Oftentimes, I would show up at 8 or 8:15 a.m. Boss. Yeah, you're here every morning on time. Me. Is my work getting done on time or before deadlines? Boss. Yes. Oh yes. Me. I don't understand the issue that you are bringing up. Boss. It's just when 5:30 comes, you're out the door. Next story. Boss. Make me a website and fill it with ads that will appeal to women. Me. People don't usually go to websites like for the ads. Boss. Wasn't listening. I want a forum. I want women to sign up and make accounts, and the ads will make them think it is a legitimate site. Me, who worked for this man as a copywriter. There's just so much about this that's impossible and illegal. Boss. Left room. I quit a few months later. His company went bankrupt a year or so after. He is a professor at the local university now, somehow. Next story. We only have so many band-aids on hand, so don't let that one go to waste. Now go wash dishes without getting your hands wet. Walks up to me. You deserve more money. Walks off. Your work is excellent and a fantastic trainer, but you aren't very sociable. You're all work. Due to us randomly changing your pay rate from hourly to commission, then back to hourly 9 months ago, HR is counting that as 2 raises. So with that in mind, your raise is 2 cents extra an hour. Next story. Oh boy, this hat, and I mean it literally. He was a cop who lost his job due to inappropriate conduct with minors, turned supervisor for a trucking company. One night, my back driver's side wheel locked up and was just skidding. He was annoyed he had to leave the bar and told me to put dish soap on it and it would be fine. I drove it like that all the way to the yard and said I wouldn't be back until I got another truck. It was fixed the next day. Next story, that he wouldn't have hired me if he had interviewed me because women are harder to work with. It was my first job. I really wish I knew about discrimination laws back then. Later, he promoted a guy before me who had less experience. Young, inexperienced people are so vulnerable to abusive bosses. Next story. The weirdest thing? You can't call off the jobs for today. It's just a little snow. The whole metro area was solid red at 6:30 in the morning. There was no way we could safely get to work, get in the trucks, and drive to a job site when it was bumper-to-bumper traffic. Next story. Before I knew not to show my full potential at work because they just take advantage of it, I once had a boss told me that I should watch Netflix while working because I was too quick, and the client wanted things done in 8 hours instead of 4. Next story. Sort everything out and then we can get shelves and containers for it. I had around 1,000 square feet with 15-foot ceilings that I had to keep clean, and that room was where everyone put old stuff to be sent to surplus. That was somehow my job to inventory. Plus, they would just drop piles of old equipment on my desk if there wasn't room. I eventually drew a line and got to declare whole stacks or piles of stuff not my problem, and get it put on pallets for surplus. There were a lot of cables, which went straight to my car, to a local scrapyard that would pay 50% copper spot price for mixed computer wire, and I took a cut for hauling it, then gave cash bonuses to coworkers and student workers who were paid hourly and who helped pack it up. This was illegal, but I DGAF. To help them out since the rest of us were salaried, and an extra few hundred would mean a lot more to them. Next story. I worked in a plastics plant that made different-sized pipes. One run was for a big black pipe that was round around a big spool. Don't know what it was used for, but wouldn't be surprised to hear it was sewage line. When the spool was full, it took a crew of 5+ and 2 forklifts to change it out. The process took so long that sometimes extra pipe would wind up on the spool, which would have to be cut off, or the spool would topple over when the forklift set it down. One day, the operator didn't see the extra pipe and set the spool down early, and it was teetering ready to fall over. Boss yells to everyone, "Get under it!" We all understood he wanted us to prop it up before it fell, and we all also understood that it weighed 5 tons. It made a loud, low-tone slap sound when it hit the shop floor. No bounce. Actually left a dent in the concrete. Next story. I discovered a process improvement at a hospital that would have saved the hospital close to $1 million every year. I went to each workflow stakeholder and explained the improvement, and all got on board. The very last stakeholder, and the meeting with all the stakeholders, didn't like that her part of the workflow was now last instead of first, which is actually where the real money was being saved. And she stood up in front of her manager, my manager, and 2 senior leaders and said, "Well, some problems just don't have solutions," and stormed out of the room. The managers and leaders looked at each other and just stood up. I was like, that's it? They were like, "Well, as not everyone is on board, we can't move forward." And I left 3 weeks later. Next story. I worked in a large global engineering consulting firm that no longer exists. I was getting flogged, working weekends, etc. to meet project demands, even won some bids, etc. So I took all of the billings and proposals over 3 years and compared it to the next level up. I was arguing for a level increase and pay increase. So he says, "This company is like a communist organization. We look after everyone equally." If I recall correctly, my response was something like, "Well, that's worked out well for the Russians." I had a job lined up and quit the next day. Next story. At the time, I was the lowest level manager at my job. We went on a manager holiday party. Boss got drunk and let slip to me that when she was my level, she used to get really drunk at these parties and inappropriate performance for her boss. Pretty sure I know how she got her position, had a company-sponsored car before even making store manager. She was pretty self-serving and no one, fellow managers or regular employees alike, could stand her, and she was the reason I ended up quitting, as well as many of the people I worked with for years. This was nearly 20 years ago now. Next story. My pack rat boss had me cleaning up old junk in drawers that hadn't been opened in years. There were a bunch of parts to machines we didn't own, and no one used anymore. Literal junk. And my boss pipes in, "Hey, maybe don't throw those away." I said, "Why?" He said if someone finds a use for those, they could be useful. I dropped everything and walked out. He came after, wonder what was wrong. I said, that applies to everything on the planet, and I don't have enough time for this mess. Next story. I used to work in a nursing home for adults with severe disabilities. Once I walked by a client and his visiting father, stopped, turned around, said hello, and kept going. Or at least, apparently I did. I forgot all about it until my boss called me into his office and told me the father had complained that I walked by without saying hello right away. My boss said I had to remember to keep my head up and notice people. My boss was usually reasonable, but that just blew my mind. Next story. My previous boss thought my succinct emails were too direct and told me to use more emojis in email. These were professional emails sent to other companies. He's a chest-thumping man-child who couldn't write a grammatically correct email to save his life. Although he's still with the company, he is no longer my boss, and I am much happier for it. Next story. I had a conflict with a coworker, another woman, so both of us female. His response was, well, I'm a man, so I don't get offended that way. This is the same man that effed our office move so bad that he got reported to our CEO and came in angry crying to our office to yell at us because he didn't like being called out. Next story. I got questioned on no problem one time from the perspective of grammar. I just told the guy, my boss, that it's a common reply in places like Australia. I also explained that you're welcome also doesn't make any sense, grammatically. You're welcome to what? To ask me again? To come to my house for dinner? For what? Next story. My boss in a clothing store told me if I polished the racks with wax paper, men would see me and get turned on. Imagine wrapping a piece of wax paper around a metal bar and rubbing it back and forth. She wanted me to do this busy work and seemed to think it was like doing something inappropriate. She clearly had some strange ideas. Next story. Yep. I'm a chef that was employed as a cook in a long-term care facility. My boss, the chef, not really a chef, prep cook at best, barks on me saying that I can't deglaze a hotel pan on the stove because it's not a cooking vessel. This guy was a loser on red. No sense in him. Next story. I had a boss tell me to advertise the plumbing/electrical business as emergency service available 24/7 because the answering service was technically available 24/7. The actual service hours were Monday to Friday, 8 to 4. No exceptions, unless you paid $300 per hour. Next story. My boss told me I had to work at the weekend because I didn't book holiday for the weekend, but I didn't work weekends. There was no facility for me to book a day off that I wasn't already contracted to work. Next story. In a planning meeting, and boss got annoyed with us getting into details, and he then says, you gotta get the airplane off the ground before knowing how to land it. I immediately began planning my exit. Next story. It's a manager's job to get the best out of people, and the way to do that is to always make them feel like they're about to be fired. Yeah, I started applying for new jobs that day. Next story. I got scolded by a supervisor for having a contagious disease. I started working at a hospital as a general maintenance worker back in 2019, several months before COVID-19 and the pandemic reared their ugly heads. One of the things that my new coworkers warned me was that I might get sick pretty often at the get-go until my body acclimated to being around so many people in various states of health. I took that advice to heart, being mindful to use my PPE and proper hygiene procedures to keep myself safe. But my body had other plans. About 3 months in, after a long day, I am washing up when I feel raised bumps running down my side towards my hip. I scope them out in the mirror and it looks like a rash. A quick ride to patient first informs me that I have broken out in shingles. I was 37 at the time. I go to work the next day, let my supervisor know, and then, after a visit to the staff medical office, I am sent home for 2.5 weeks. This was a pain for me, as I wanted to be there for the team, earn my pay, etc., but it was also good to be quarantined because I was working in radiology patient areas where they were highly susceptible to disease due to being immunocompromised. If one of the shingle pustules had popped and got on them, they'd possibly be infected. After the 2.5 weeks, the shingles flare-up subsided, and I get cleared for duty by the medical staff. I hand off my paperwork to my supervisor to have him sign off for my return to active duty, which he does without hesitation. At this point, I figure everything is good to go, holding my hand out for my copy of the paperwork. Only he hesitates and stares me down for a moment. Supervisor, we're not going to have this issue again, are we? Me, what? Do you mean getting sick? Supervisor, it would be regrettable if it does. Just don't let something like this happen again. He handed me my paperwork, I thanked him, turned on my heel, and walked promptly from the room without further comment. In my head, I am screaming. What the heck was this exchange? Dude, I had a transmittable disease. The medical staff made me stay out until I was cleared, which is proper procedure. It's not like I was planning to get shingles. Good God, that man was an idiot. Next story. I worked at a Fry's Electronics, kind of like a Best Buy, in home audio sales. My area was home theater in a box. The shelving was not built to match the corporate planogram for the department, so the displays looked crowded, and there was generally only room for one unit in a box on the shelf of each model. The plan allowed for at least two and better spacing. Eventually, I get called in and written up for my area looking bad on Wednesday and Thursday and not following the planogram. Well, Wednesday and Thursday are my days off. And how do you follow a plan when the shelves are a different shape? You can come straighten the shelves on your days off. You can forget right off, for so many reasons. I was in sales, not merchandising. That was a whole separate other job. Get them to do their job. I can't sell anything if I'm not clocked in. Get a friend to write it up and give you the commission. Heck no. They ended up just firing me. A while later, they got what was coming to them though. Next story. I worked at a cafe and the owner did as well. She took a cut of the tips, despite the fact that we were all paid $10 per hour. This was in New York around 2014, so not a living wage. We confronted her about it, and she went nuts and shouted, "Look, I take a cut of tips so we can sell drinks in even increments and not charge tax. It's common sense." This woman owned a fashion business in the garment district that also owned its own factory in China. She owned a 4-floor brownstone in Park Slope with a separate apartment for her live-in maid/nanny. Absolutely the most entitled human being I have ever met. I'm still working on a novel based on my experience there. The working title is Hexa Kitchen. Next story. Boss. Make a spreadsheet that shows how many shirts we need to order for fulfillment. Me. Make spreadsheet that shows how many shirts we need to add to get to fulfillment. Boss. I don't like this spreadsheet. It's supposed to have the quantities of t-shirts you're entering, but it has negative numbers. You can't have negative t-shirts. Me. Writes a simple formula so I can still enter the data the way that makes sense to me, but the totals show as positive values, so boss is not upset by negative numbers. Boss. There's math in here. Why is there math in the spreadsheet? Me. Removes all formulas and makes a simple data table in Excel instead. Boss. Okay, this is more like it. Next story. I was the head of production. Someone else was laid off. The head of promotions was demoted to take over that position. I had to run promo by myself. I asked for a raise. My boss told me, "Your low pay is job security. When it comes time for layoffs again, we won't be looking at you because you make so little." I checked out after that. Did the absolute bare minimum. You get what you pay for. Got myself fired soon after. Told a sleazy sales guy exactly what I thought of him. When I was called in by my boss to apologize, I told them that I wasn't sorry and they could both go forget themselves. Next story. I work in logistics. My boss asked me what a freight class is. I explained it to him. He then says, "Well, I don't know what a freight class is, but I don't think you know either." After I had just explained in detail what it was, as the logistics manager, who has 6 years of experience and uses freight classes daily. He has no experience in logistics and had just said he doesn't know what this simple logistics term is, but somehow that makes him knowledgeable enough to tell me I'm wrong. I was not wrong, by the way. Dumbest thing I've ever heard anyone say. Next story. I don't know if this counts. During a meeting at my retail job, one of the bosses was trying to express how important it was to keep the bills all the same way and how difficult it was to straighten them out. I asked, why? There is only 4 ways they can face. Make a stack for each direction and then organize them. Previously, at my food service job, my boss was frustrated that I wasn't keeping the bills straight and told me to fix them. He was even more so when I gave it back to him fixed 20 seconds later. Next story. Since you're pregnant, I basically lost my position, got tossed into another one, and then they started pulling me to work my old position. I accepted it first because they kept my pay the same, but it was so stressful going to work and not knowing what I would be doing each day. I eventually walked up to the new management and explained that I did know what they did was discrimination. I explained my terms and got what I wanted until they went out of business a few months later. Next story. Do as you're told, not as you see me do. This dude was an absolute foolish. Like, literally the stupidest person in a management position that I have ever seen. It was so bad, and he acted so out there that I was waiting for someone to come tell me that they were filming a movie, and this dude was the funny antagonist or something in the movie. This dude was, and probably still is, an absolute buffoon. Next story. I worked at a retail optical chain years ago, and at the time, my girlfriend, now wife, was considering getting a doctorate, which meant I would only need to work part-time. I mentioned this at work when someone asked about our future plans, and the district manager came out to the store and told me, "Never discuss a future that doesn't involve this company. It's bad for your coworkers' morale." Next story. I was dispatched 700 stops one Christmas at UPS as a driver. The loaders were behind the truck, literally throwing the packages into the truck when I started my day with almost an hour late start. Manager told me the load quality and how the day went was my fault. 500 left at 1,700. Chris, if you ever see this, you're one of the worst managers to have ever graced reality with your existence. Next story. I was working in the Middle East and my wife, who was in the UK, gave birth to our daughter 10 weeks early. I started sorting with HR and the travel office for tickets to get me home early. My boss told me I couldn't go home because he didn't believe my wife had a baby. I spoke to HR. They spoke to my boss. I went home to see my baby. Funnily enough, he wasn't with the company for much longer. Next story. You don't get paid to think. Oh man, in a heavy construction industry, that was probably the dumbest thing he could have said. Need 3 feet of material taken out? Nope. I did 6. Need this backfilled? Haha, every single boulder I found goes in that hole instead of dirt. Got to the point where the boss got pretty mad and asked what on earth I was doing. I don't get paid to think. Next story. Because I'm implying there could possibly be a problem. That's right, boss. That's why I say that. I want to make sure that the customers know there could be a problem if they go to our competitors. But here's, at Domino's, there's actually no problem. I will do this with a smile. It's only reasonable. Anything else I can do for you, boss? Next story. I've heard that this is a generational thing. Gen X and younger see this as synonymous with happy to help, while older generations take it like you're calling them a potential problem, which isn't surprising since the older generations take everything as offensively as humanly possible. Next story. Boss told me to do something unethical and against directive of his boss, who had earlier told me what to do. I explained this to him and he said, "I'm the boss, not you, and not his boss." That didn't last long before his boss had to come have a conversation with him. Next story. I'll give you a super recent one. In the past 2 weeks, actually. You're using too much water for washing dishes. Me. Thinking why the heck my boss owns a restaurant if she's concerned about the water bill for an industrial dish machine. Next story. I used to make a lot of animated videos for work. Once I was asked to make one to advertise our spring conference. Made a nice one, with characters of all skin tones, per usual. VP asked me to rework it so it was less multicultural. Next story. It's fairly common, but the phrase, "you need to make time." Look man, I don't have a time machine, and I don't have a time dilation device. So if I tell you I don't have time to do something, then I goddamn don't have time to do it. Next story. Cooks can't have their items near the window because customers could see them. So now the cooks have to walk over to the dishwashers area for new spatulas and lids, instead of having them all right there on that convenient shelf. Next story. At Chili's, management told us we couldn't use the to-go cups for our drinks because we were losing money. In to-go, they told me not to use a box to hold multiple bowls of soup because the plastic boxes were expensive. Next story. You're going above and beyond, and solving all these problems is making me look bad. That's not my fault, bro. You suck at your job. But thanks for the compliment in front of upper management and our director. Next story. When you're not busy, I want you to face the soup aisle, because soup is popular, and that aisle becomes a mess really fast. Guess what I was literally doing? This guy said this like it was his catchphrase. Next story. I was once told going above and beyond was the expectation during a review in which my supervisor at the time gave me all mid-level reviews on everything. It was like 8 years ago, and I'm still mad about it. Next story. I asked for a raise once because I was struggling to even afford groceries, and my boss told me if I needed more money that I could get a low-interest personal loan. I quit shortly thereafter. Next story. That I had to be there 15 minutes before my clock-in time. I'm very proud of 21-year-old me for realizing that was absolutely ridiculous and causing the gas station to change their policy. Next story. When I told my boss that my last day on the job would be Thursday, he said, "What about Friday?" I said, "What about Friday?" He said, "You didn't request Friday off?" Next story. I was outside during lunch once speaking to another coworker about an annoying regular customer that would come in and stop everything that everyone was doing to ask the same question, and it did not matter the response, we were wrong about it. A manager was outside as well, smoking and listening in on the entire conversation. When I went back inside to clock in after lunch, the same manager asked to see me in their office and told me that I should not be talking negatively about the customers. I told her, okay. First of all, I live in America. She has this cool thing, the First Amendment. It protects freedom of speech. I wasn't wearing any company insignia to imply I work here. I was also outside 20 feet away from the actual facility, talking to someone else who understood the annoyance of what I was talking about. They also did not have their insignia on, per company policy. So you have no right to tell me what I can and cannot say, ever. But especially when I am off the clock and on lunch, and stormed out. I didn't wait for a reply. I just walked off. The dumbest conversation I have ever had to this day. Just another manager with a power trip. Next story. I used to work at Starbucks while I was in college. I have 2 quotes from my manager that I'll never forget. 1. I gave her a heads up greater than 1 minute in advance that I had finals and wouldn't be around. Mid-test, my phone goes off for 10 minutes straight. Call her back when I finish, and she forces me to come to work for a sit-down. Whether you asked for the time off or not, when we need hands, we need hands. You need to think long and hard and choose between your education and your career. 2. My grandmother died overnight, unexpectedly. In a panic, I rushed home because they had set up a funeral immediately. Not even joking. As we're physically lowering her casket into the grave, I get a call with my manager screaming at me for being MIA. I apologize and explain the situation. Your grandmother? She is an immediate family. That is no excuse to not show up. Get over here. We'll also be having a chat later. My family is primarily off the boat Italians. My mom had to hold people back because they were ready to torch the business when they heard what she had said. Don't work at Starbucks. Next story. Several months ago, I changed teams at my job. I work for a large company. I had nothing against my old team. I just wanted to do something different after being there for a few years. I came to regret my decision after just a couple of months. I got put on a high-priority project. So high priority that people were expected to work extra and deliver results no matter what. People on my team were regularly spending as much as 12 hours a day in the office and coming in on weekends. I refused to do such things, and eventually got told that I'm not performing up to expectations, nor am I delivering results at an acceptable level. I mentioned that I don't like the project and want to move on to something else. My boss told me the work isn't going to change, the expectations aren't going to change, and engineers at my level need to be able to deal with ambiguity and deliver results. It was at that moment I decided to back off that team as fast as possible. Next story. Manager telling me that if I worked for a competitor while out of state for college placement, then I would have to resign because I would be breaching a non-compete clause in my contract. I'm hourly, and when shifts end, so does my employment. They aren't obligated to give me shifts. I said, "Oh, okay, so what's to stop me if I didn't tell you and just did it?" Her response? "Oh, nothing, but you'd still need to resign. P.S. There's no non-compete in my contract, just another manager on a power trip. I swear they're getting dumber every year that goes by." Next story. I'm in healthcare, work in both clinic and hospital settings. This year we were told we needed to increase patient access in the clinic, so we'd regularly get double booked in the first slot of the morning, and also discouraged from turning late patients away. In the same conversation, we were informed that we would not be getting cost of living or merit-based pay increases, and that our incentive programs would be phased out. Please do more work for the same, less money? No. Next story. I called in sick for the first time. I wasn't sick. I had needed to go for a pregnancy confirmation and dating scan. Male boss calls me into the back office as soon as I walked in the next day to say, "We don't skip work for our periods." I waited 2 months to inform of my pregnancy, and he, embarrassed, promptly laid me off in the post-Christmas cuts. I hope menopause was comfortable for Mr. Mike Campbell. Next story. Dang, that's rough. I got told by my foreman that I can't say I don't know anymore. He wanted me to know the answer, so I said, okay. He then asked me questions about what was in the yard, where a certain person was and what that person was doing. I smiled, looked at him and said, "Sorry, but I got no idea, man." Then laughed uncontrollable for 5 minutes before he dismissed me. Next story. As a first-year lawyer with no idea how any of it worked, I asked my boss a question about a case. His response has lived rent-free in my head for 26 years. "You know, angry, bitter lawyer, I feel like every time you come to my office and ask me a question, you're trying to take advantage of my 25 years of experience." Yes, I was. Absolutely, that is the point. Next story. "We don't need to rush. Take your time." Hey Ryan, if you didn't want us to rush, you shouldn't have pushed us to this point in the first place. We're not rushing because we feel pressured. We're rushing because you thought it'd be a great idea to start something at 12:45 a.m., and now we can't leave until it's done. Absolutely idiot. Who thinks he's my boss? Next story. My manager once told us he was concerned about staff being off sick too much, that we should basically never be off for illness. Specifically said if we have the runs, just take Imodium and got on with it. I worked in a kitchen. You shouldn't work with food until you've been free of it for 48 hours. He didn't care. Next story. When I announced I was pregnant with my first child, my manager told me it was the stupidest mistake I could make for my career. Left that job before giving birth, enjoyed being a SAHM, then pivoted into tech upon returning to work. I now make 5 times what I did at that measly job. Next story. Number 1 is just being told to do the same thing you do every day, like there's some difference, or they're going to make you try harder, when everyone is already trying enough and doing pretty well considering, and often the things they tell you, they don't even know how to do. Next story. That I was walking too fast. I was like, I'm 5 feet 10 inches. I have giraffe legs that account for like 60% of my height. That means a long stride. I'm just walking? Normally? Would you like me to chop my legs off at the knees? Like, what on earth do you want me to do here? Next story. I'm currently working in the oil marine trade as a subcontractor. Twice this month I have received angry emails because I'm not sending live reports of the time logs, while out of network in the middle of the sea. Luckily, my boss understands that this guy is an idiot. Next story. You should get all your friends to take out loans and invest that money. You should also do that yourself. A $50,000 loan is nothing at 25. While everyone is like, at last that in debt for student loans. And I was at twice that. I quit shortly after. Next story. I thought you were broad-minded when I got overloaded with million of tasks, and she was surprised that me, a newbie working here only after 2 months, I'm not able to finish them so fast as team who works here since 2010. Next story. Working in a restaurant, waiting for customers with the manager. Me. Oh, looks like an AIDS walk is going on. Manager. Well, they better not come in here and spread their germs around. Dude, that's not how AIDS or their walks work. Next story. I had a manager tell me something similar when saying, "No problem," to customers. He said that it was negative. I realized there's the no in the phrase, but I'm pretty sure yes problem would be negative. Next story. Boomers get weirdly offended by the phrase, "no problem," because it sounds like you're doing them a favor by assisting them instead of it being their divine right. Boomers are obnoxious. Next story. My boss said, "You did it right, but you did it wrong." Okay. I walked away. There was no way to respond to this appropriately without being a smartass, so I just walked away. Next story. I think the response of "no problem" comes across as a little rude or perhaps overly presumptuous because it is something more you would say to a friend than to a customer. Next story. Sounds like your manager was an idiot. I tell the owner of my company, "no problem," almost every time they ask me to do something or thank me for something I've done. Next story. It's 2 words either way. I had a work training one day and we were encouraged to say "my pleasure." It's actually a lot nicer and people really appreciate it. At first I thought it was dumb too, but it really makes a customer feel warm and fuzzy. Next story. I mean, your boss was not wrong at all. When I thank an employee for doing their job and they tell me it's not a problem, I hadn't implied that them doing what they're paid to do would be some sort of personal favor, and therefore, possibly a problem. Me thanking them for doing what they're paid to do is a courtesy on my part. "You're welcome," or even, "You're welcome, have a nice day," is the correct response. But to answer the question, I've had so many deer-in-the-headlights responses to my current boss's brain-dead requests that my brain has bear-hugged them into oblivion. I'll literally give a blank expression and a forced, okay, and then just not do that thing. I guess an example will be that she'll tell me to document the process when I make a human error, like I'm going to look into my documentation to remind myself to not accidentally press the hang up button on my phone every so often. Yeah, I get it. I made a human mistake. Won't let it happen again. I got the memo. What is the most ridiculous thing your boss asked you to do? I was a one-man IT department at a company of approximately 150 employees. At the request of the CEO, I single-handedly managed the migration from one CRM to another with zero downtime. In return, I got a title change from manager to director. It didn't come with any salary change. This was the moment that caused me to realize that working hard is for suckers. I used the new title as leverage for a better paying position at another company. Next story, well, my company just sent out a memo that, despite our state being in a state of emergency due to Hurricane Helene, anyone calling out tonight, tomorrow without a doctor's note will be fired. So that. Next story. Used to work at a nationwide retailer. I pushed carts, buggies for those of you that call them that, at the time. The shift started when the store opened, but on particularly slow days, I would help stock product or even check people out. There was only one cart pusher scheduled at a time, so there was no being sent home early. So on one exceptionally slow day, the top manager of the entire store brought out a mop and bucket and told me to mop the concrete in front of the entrance. Not tile, not linoleum. Mop the concrete. I half-assed it as there was no way any amount of mopping was going to clean concrete. All it really did was tear up the fibers in the mop head. Never really got along with that guy, and that solidified the negative view I had of him. Next story. Dress in a clown suit and rainbow wig for a kid's party? No. In another job, cover for the boss while he was off with his girlfriend. His wife would show up in tears looking for him. Next story. When I was in the Coast Guard, we would have duty for 48 hours and then 48 hours off. Before we could go home, someone in the command had to grant us liberty. One time, the XO would not grant us liberty until we cleaned the dumpster because he thought it was too dirty. Next story. When going on vacation for a week 3,000 miles away, he wanted me to call in every day to get status updates and solve whatever problems might be happening. Next story. After working from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., my boss asked me to cover his daughter's shift from 5 p.m. to 12 a.m. I told him it would be a 15-hour shift for me. He insisted I work the shift because she wanted to go see the last Twilight movie. My response was, figuratively, thermonuclear. I told his ex-wife who owned half of his business. My shift ended at 7 p.m., and I got a $1,000 bonus for not filing a complaint with the Labor Department. Next story. Decorate 2 large commercial trucks and create a large float for kids to ride on. No materials other than lights and generators. By myself, in 2 days, no budget for a Christmas parade. I succeeded. Next story. My boss in the Marines more than once took us on field trips to a nearby city and ordered us to take video of homeless people and get their names to practice interviewing skills. I was like, these are people, not props? They aren't your artsy, fartsy, gritty photo shoot. They're people having probably the worst time in their lives, and they don't want a camera in their faces. So I made up fake names and took as few shots as possible. Also, he tried to take us to an abandoned amusement park to trespass for photos, but I managed to weasel out of it. I don't want to get arrested and subjected to military court. My boss had some cool stories, but he was kind of a maniac. Next story. The local news was doing a story on one of our clients who owned a pawn shop. I had to pretend to pawn something. I agreed to be a customer as long as they didn't show my face. My husband still jokes about it now and again, with the line the reporter narrated. Sadly, she will not get enough to ease her financial hardship. Next story. When I was in my teens in the late 70s, I got a job working at a farm implement and AMC Jeep dealership. It sold and fixed cars, tractors, chainsaws, etc. Was only part-time on Saturdays, but full-time during the summer. I swept the floor, cleaned bathroom, washed cars, helped mechanics. The place was owned by 2 brothers, older in their 60s or 70s. One of the brothers' wives heard I needed rags. Next thing I know, she's down at the garage offering to sell them to me. Next story. I worked as an underwriter. I was forced to go on a business trip with our head of sales. We got stuck in an airport for an hour or two. Boss told the head of sales that I should find a computer, they did not give us laptops, and log in and do some work while we waited. He wanted me to review credit applications with social security numbers and other information from a public terminal in an airport. Next story. I used to work at Taco Bell, and on the receipt, there was a little online survey at the bottom. My manager told me to go through the trashes to find receipts that people had thrown out, so that we could fill them out ourselves so our store would get a better rating. I was a stupid 17-year-old, so of course I did it. We used to give ourselves perfect reviews all the time, actually. Next story. I was in the Marine Corps. One of the dumb things I had to do was climb 8, maybe 10 feet on top of our storage boxes and sweep years worth of dirt from the top. I was doing that because the commandant of the Marine Corps was going to be in the area, not in the building. The next day, we stood at attention in front of our shop, and as he was driven by. Next story, paint a fire hall with no paint or paintbrush, and change a light bulb with no light bulb to replace it. 3 weeks doing nothing but watching movies, rabbit catching, and tree finding. 37 weeks of actual work for the town. Next story, made it abundantly clear before starting a work-study job at uni through myself and my mother who worked there that I am disabled and unable to do manual labor because of the extreme pain it causes me. My mother even had a chat with my soon-to-be boss that this was okay before they hired me. Cut to a few months later when we happened to be moving buildings. My boss's boss asked me to box up his entire floor-to-ceiling bookshelf full of enormous, heavy books that were way too many to count. I politely declined, stating my disability prevents me from doing such work. Not only did I catch heck from the other secretary who worked there, telling me, "You're not supposed to tell him no," the "forget I can't lady," I had to hear from my boss how her boss talked mess about me saying no to him, even though she knows why I couldn't. Still got written up for it. Then they ended up letting me go right after the move anyway. Absolutely jerks. Every last one. Next story. Come back to work while my firstborn was in NICU, and my wife was in the hospital in another state. He was born 6 weeks early the morning after we went on vacation to a different state. Next story. After months of battling, owner at a previous job fires me. She texts me next AM, asked me to come in to show her how to do everything. I told her I'd be right over. Not. Next story. Go sweep away the rain in the parking lot. It was during a thunderstorm. I think he thought he was some kind of macho military dude or something. He'd never been in the military. Next story. Make the numbers look good for some campaigns he ran. They didn't look great, so he wanted me to do some better estimates or some mess with them. This was going to the COO, so I really wasn't keen on doing it, but he wouldn't stop. The next day I told him this still was a bad idea, but nope, still running with it. We sat in a meeting with his boss, and as he looked over everything, he said, "These numbers better not be padded to look better, or you're absolutely fired." Guy's face went cold and pale, and right after he looked at me and said that we should probably look at the numbers again and maybe try a different approach. I said no worries. I kept my original version that wasn't wrong and ran with that one. Next story. Drive a truck that required a Class B license while only having a permit to the DMV by myself, and take the practical test which I had not been trained for. It was on a milk route, and the supervisor training me had quit without warning. The vice president of the company called from another state and told me to do it. When I informed him that it was definitely illegal, he said do it anyway. I quit on the spot. Next story. At my last job, I was subjected to harassment by a manager. Everyone in the office saw it. Later on, the media was at our office about taxes. My supervisor had a meeting with everyone. She told everyone not to say anything about workplace harassment to the media because of the Me Too movement. Next story. Manager got upset with me going to my son, 3 at the time, who has been in hospital for a major kidney issue. My wife has been there without leaving for the week. Told me to get over it and get back to work. Boy, did I let him have it. Next story. Told me to reverse engineer one of Google's UI libraries, Material UI Pro, premium stuff, so we didn't have to pay for it. I said no, and he threatened to fire me. Well, I'm still here, and he's not. Next story. Move a huge load that takes 2 machines all by myself, and I was on a smaller, less maneuverable machine. When I refused, he said, "That's okay. Doesn't need to be moved for 4 days anyway." Next story. I regularly go into work 20 to 25 minutes early every day for the last few years. One Friday, my wife had a meeting and couldn't drop our daughter off at school, so I did. That day I was just 5 to 6 minutes early. He took me into the office and gave me mess for not coming into work 20 to 25 early like I usually do. After that day, I started showing up on time, even if that meant sitting in my truck outside work and waiting for my shift to start. Next story. Wear a traffic cone with "dunce" written on it as a hat, and stand in the corner facing the walls while shouting at myself for being a foolish and wasting the oxygen that plants were trying very hard to make for us. He also used to make me do press-ups and run everywhere as fast as I could. Oh, and to add insult to injury, he used to make me call him Sergeant, and I know for a fact that his real name was Dave. Next story, pour hot water on frozen dog waste. I worked in a dog daycare, and the winters here can get pretty brutal. Had one particular area where the dogs just went out for potty in small groups. The lazy jerk that closed the day before didn't scoop it up at all, and because of how freezing the temps were, it froze. Most ridiculous thing I ever had to do. Next story, I was once hired at a high-tech startup to review its code. The IT department dragged its feet, and for more than a week didn't give me a computer. My boss said, "No problem, you can just print it out from someone else's computer and review it that way." Dude, there wouldn't be enough paper in the city. Next story, he bought a goat to eat, but his wife flipped out. So he brought it to the office and asked me if I'd take it home and let it live in my yard until it was all grown up so he could eat it. Offered no pay for it. Long story short, the goat was delicious, and he eventually got over it. Next story, hosting an event this morning in the midst of this tropical storm. Boss lady wants us, 2 of us, to walk to the parking lot and escort the attendees in with umbrellas, all 75 of them. Fortunately, it quit raining long enough to get everyone in. She can be a wild one for sure. Next story, reword an email because she wouldn't send it that way, on a project that I was supposed to manage since she was working on delegating. She did the whole project for me, then complained that I did nothing. I tried, but then I'd get micromanaged. Next story, change one word in every policy to show the state that we reviewed and updated our policies. Because the minutes from the policy committee noting review of policies wasn't good enough, she actually wanted a change noted. Next story, I was a graphic designer. Owner decided half the office staff should dig up the company's softball diamond and install drainage pipes. Took a week. Owner drove a backhoe the whole time. He hit the gas main, of course. Next story. One time, my boss called me into our company's printing shop that her family also owned. Turns out, she was planning on having a yard sale and wanted to see if I wanted to take anything. Next story. I was an administrative assistant in a branch. I was not a personal assistant. My boss asked me to clean out her files and bookshelf and get rid of what she doesn't use or need. When I asked how I would know what she uses or needs, she said, "You will hold up each piece of paper for me, and I'll tell you." These were transitory records, so she was not trying to pull a fast one having me destroy documents for her or anything like that. She also wanted me to disinfect her desk, light switches, keyboard, mouse, and doorknobs anytime she left her office, so it was sterilized when she returned from meetings. Though out the day because she has a peanut allergy, I told her no. If she needed such services, she can get a work accommodation to approve the budget for extra janitorial services. Her office had a door that locked. No one goes in there touching stuff with peanut hands. She was just power tripping and who had a lot of work that I was actually hired to do that needed doing.